hear you as you're speaking about this, and one of the things that I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about also is the shared interest in CFT, and really emergent inside of the CBS world, this interest in what kind of monkey we are, this kind of deep interest in evolution science. It's the thing you were referring to as like some of these repertoires that are not just cultivated over the course of our lifetime, but that are sort of baked into who and what we are as organisms. And I am increasingly convinced that if we don't pay attention to that we miss opportunities to have the most effective interactions, the most effective exchanges with our clients.
I was doing a talk on affiliation and attachment, and basically looking at like the roots, the evolutionary roots of both compassion and psychological flexibility in cooperation and in caring and cooperative repertoires as they've evolved. And after a little brief kind of introduction, I asked how many of you are familiar with attachment theory and evolutionary theory of attachment. Everyone, just about everyone. How many of you take the literature on developmental psychology and neuroscience of attachment seriously? Okay. And how many of you feel it's important? How many of you have thought about it in terms of psychological flexibility? It's like 3 hands went up. And I thought, that's remarkable, and beautiful too, because that means we're ready, as a community, we're beginning to approach these things and to offer, not just to take from, these areas of science, but to offer something in terms of prediction and influence and a rubric to look at those things. So I'm very interested, it keeps me up at night, how in a CBS consistent way, we begin to approach affiliative, affect, attachment dynamics, and how we can understand, these baked in predispositions and repertoires in light of psychological flexibility and how to shape it. Mm-hmm. And I've been dying to talk to you about this. So if you have anything to share around that, man, it would be huge.
My ability to understand these, very high level concepts has always been like, when I get it is when I get it like in the exchanges that I have, with people. And I think, I think I know what you're talking about when you talk about that relationship. I just came out of a supervision meeting right before this meeting. And I'm working with a particular student right now who, in the meeting, she was talking about a client who she's seeing. And she was saying about this client that he had a very difficult time describing his own inner experience. And it was mostly, I don't know. And he brought this thing in that he had written about his sadness. And she, was extraordinarily moved by this thing that he had written. So he couldn't talk about it with her. But it clearly wasn't that he didn't have words for it, because he'd written it down on this piece of paper. But somehow in this interaction with her, he wasn't, free to say this. And one of the things she said to me was, she said, it's like there's a wall between him and what he feels. And I've been working hard with a student, and well, you know how I feel about my students and about my the meaning of my exchange with them. And so I asked her something about it. I said, do you know what that's like? Having a wall between you and what you feel. And she's like, yeah. And I said, how have you responded to that? And, her own, I don't know, showed up. And her own, like, I fear that it makes me, that I can't know myself and that I can't be genuine with people. And I'm afraid, and I don't like being that. And I asked her, what's that like, when you find yourself in that place where there's like a wall between you and what you feel. And, she talked about, her worry about being ingenuine, because if you can't connect with how you feel in the moment, can you be genuine with people? And does that foster that in others? And what I was suggesting to her is that she could use her own sense of feeling cut off from her own feelings and to allow that to feed her questions to the client. Sometimes it's like there's a wall between you and what you feel. And I know that in my own experience, that sometimes it's like there's a wall between me and what I feel. I don't know if this is appropriate supervision behavior, but I'm like looking into her eyes and I said, I love you so much. And, like we had this like moment of connection about being disconnected.
Yeah.
And you could just see psychological flexibility emerge in that moment. Like it was like you could see visibly that it was okay for her to be inside of her own skin in that moment.
That's beautiful. So what I hear in that, to kind of link that with some of our CFT kind of work, would that be okay?
Yeah, please.
Is like there's something that about her learning history, and there's something that about that client's learning history, and it relates to their deepest humanity, and that they're somewhere along the way, like so many of us, they learned to be afraid of that connectedness and empathy, and even their empathy with themselves, even to look within. Maybe someone who was a caregiver was also frightening or neglectful. Some process somewhere along the way, like led to a place where attachment, affiliation, warmth, connectedness, feeling was frightening. Is frightening, and that wall goes up, the avoidance begins, and what I see with a lot of young therapists is when that happens, one of the first things they want to do is pour on more empathy and pour on more care, which is like throwing gasoline on a fire, and the person's just going to be more afraid because that's what they're afraid of in themselves and in interpersonally too. So what you did quite elegantly is you parsed out this flexible perspective taking empathy piece, and you imagined what it would be like. You related it to your own experience, and you normalized it. You did what a lot of people in CFT attach to this "it's not your fault" message. Like, this is what it is to be human. Do you know what it's like to be human? This is what this person is going through. This is our common suffering that unites us. And I feel that too. And that allowed a softening, and you just like went for it in a beautiful way and brought like loving kindness and real love right into the room, therapeutic love. Like, I love you so much. And that, created something. You experientially communicated the processes to her. You didn't just do it in a didactic or rule governed way. You embodied it and transmitted almost that. So when she's with that client, she has a sense of that experience and how to depathologize. And in CFT, we make a big deal out of it. We point out that that's activating something that's embodied, like it's activating this kind of capacity to feel stabilized and soothed through the activation of the, vagus nerve and all this. And in CBS, it's those kind of behavior of body or behavior of biology or behavior of brain is less emphasized because we tend to look at the organism in context, and that level of analysis. But I find it moving and heartening to have room to look at all of these levels of behavior and connect with it, as long as it's not lectury, and you pull it into your head and say, well, that's because your body's system for soothing, that's like, might as well bag it. But what you did was like real and really moving to hear about. I'm going to see clients for the rest of the day. My mind was saying, okay, yeah, I want to keep that in my back pocket.